So you're thinking about doing an ADU on your property. Where do you start? So guys, I have Josh Gullick today, my number one mortgage lender here in town in sunny San Diego. We're gonna go deep into that because I do have some clients out there that are usually in their 60 to 65 range. They're getting tired of the stairs. They're thinking like, oh my God, you know what? We love this neighborhood. We don't wanna leave. We wanna throw an ADU, maybe get some income or move into the ADU and rent out the big house.
I've got a client that rents out her house and her ADU, so she occasionally moves out of the house. She's got a place in Big Bear, but she's got it was kind of like a box house almost that she got from, I want to say Costco, but between the big house and the other one, she makes like $175,000 on this property in Bay Park between the two.
Wow.
But most of the time she's living in that and renting out her house. So that's her main source of income.
You know, I saw that, Josh, on Costco. You're absolutely right. I mean, my wife and I were looking online randomly because we're trying to do our backyard and looking at some ideas on like patio covers and this and that and sheds. And next thing you know, I did see like pretty much a Lego house.
I mean, with the amount of money she's made, she's on to something. But we do get a lot of questions about ADUs, how to finance them. You know, do I need a construction loan? And we do finance construction of a lot of ADUs, but the majority we end up just financing through some of the equity in the property that they already have, so we don't have to go through the more arduous process of getting plans approved, getting a appraiser to tell us what the value of the property is going to be after, get a qualified builder, get them approved with our company, and all the rigmarole that goes on along with that. But usually we're just taking out either a home equity line of credit, if somebody has a lower interest rate, if they've had that property for a few years. If their interest rate's kind of consistent with the market right now, a lot of times we'll just do cash out. Then you can use the money for whatever you want. There's nobody overseeing the project. You can run it however you want, as slow or long as you want. You're not restricted to timelines that you would be with a construction loan. You just have a lot more flexibility.
So you recommend a cash out refi, use that money, go ahead and build your ADU, and then move on?
If you have that ability, yes. I think that's just a lot cleaner way to do it rather than going through it's a more burdensome process to go through the construction loan process, and it's going to be a lower interest rate than going the construction route. The only reason you would really want to go with a construction loan for something like that is if you needed to use the future value, we'll call it your after renovated value of that property in order to qualify for financing. But if you've got the equity in your house already, just pull some money out, either through a home equity line, cash out refi, use that to finance the construction of the ADU, and the property value is going to go up too. I mean, you're an expert in this area. How much more do you see properties go
It's nuts. I mean, just by the cash flow alone, you could rent out this ADU for maybe a couple $1,000s.
Absolutely.
I mean, right there, that makes a significant impact on value. And so I think it's an absolute no-brainer for somebody considering, if they have, especially if they have a 2-story home, I roll on the mats with jujitsu, as you know. Yeah. My knees are going bad already. So.
I mean, and you've been seeing them for a long time, and we used to 15 years ago, before ADUs were as prevalent as they are now. So a lot of the rules in California changed, I want to say 2017, under SB 1065. Mm-hmm. They made ADUs, like the process of getting ADUs permitted, a lot easier. Then that got expanded on in 2021 with SB 9, SB 10. You no longer have to have a lot of the setback requirements that you would normally have to build an ADU or another, actually even legal unit, which you can do now through SB 9.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because you're throwing all this letters out there. Some of it, I'm sure, even with me, is kind of going a little overhead, because I saw one time on the news in Pacific Beach, I mean, somebody built almost right on the property line. Tell us about some of those different rules.
So if we're talking about ADUs, that was specifically that SB 1065. That has to do with it just made it a lot easier to build something at the state level. You can build an ADU, like an accessory dwelling unit, granny flat, that is no more than 50% of the total square footage or total footprint of the main dwelling area, up to a maximum of 1,200 square feet. Now that got expanded on by that Senate Bill 9, where you could actually build up to 4 units on a lot that's only designated for one. So it's zoned for one single family dwelling. You can actually build up to 4 units on it. There are some more requirements that you want to talk to a contractor and talk to the city, because the cities can change some of those requirements at the local level, but at the state level, it's kind of like unilaterally passed with this law that allows you to do this. So
are you seeing that just here in California or
that's a California thing. Now ADUs are kind of a nationwide thing because it makes so much sense for multi-generational families.
Correct.
And just with the general cost of real estate these days, offsetting that cost by generating some income from a relatively inexpensive construction of an ADU, I mean, it's like a no-brainer. I mean,
I agree.
It's one of the only ways some people can afford to live and own here
and stay in San Diego.
Absolutely. So,
yeah.
But like we just talked about, renting that on a short-term basis too. I mean, there are obvious opponents to some of these new rules, and these lax rules does cause some issues in certain neighborhoods where you have a lack of parking, and people just generally don't want a lot more people in a smaller space. But we've been dealing with a rental crisis here in California in general for the last 10 years, and that's what this all really came about from. So it's it provides a lot of opportunity for developers, homeowners, and future homeowners.
Now, how long does that process take? If they're going to get a line of credit, they're basically pulling cash out. How long from A to Z, the moment that you pick up the phone, you take a loan application, how long does it take?
I'll say when most people are looking at going through this process, they're usually talking to a contractor, and I find that tends to be the longest part. So once they talk to me, either they haven't started anything and they just got an idea in their head and they want to know how to execute it, then I'll give them some general framework there. Or they've already spoken with a contractor, they know how much something's going to cost, and then I'll usually tell them, hey, if we're doing an open-ended line of credit, it's super easy because we don't have to pull any money out until you actually need it. Or if you're going to fund certain phases of construction, you can do that without pulling out a lump sum. If we're pulling out a lump sum, you usually want to add some cushion there. But once they get to me and we're going through the actual loan process, it depends on if it's your primary residence or an investment property. So if we're doing a refinance on a primary residence, there is a mandatory 3-day right to rescission. So once you sign final loan documents, we still have to wait an additional 3 days before we can fund that loan. So usually we're looking at about 21 to 30 days on a primary residence. We're looking at 14 to 21 days on an investment property because it doesn't have that same right to rescission.
So 14 to 21 days.
Yeah.
Now, the scenario I shared earlier is somebody were moving from the big house, a 2-story, moving into the ADU. Is that still considered primary residence?
Great question. Yes, it is. Now, from a qualifying standpoint, so for the loan side of things and using rents as income, you can't move into the ADU and say you're going to rent out the big house and then use the big house as rent. Now, you can if it shows on your tax returns. So if you're already claiming it on your tax returns, you can do that. But Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they have rules that allow you to actually use rents from an ADU. And prospective rents. So like for Fannie Mae, for example, Fannie Mae allows you to use the market rents, which would be determined by something called a market rent survey. So an appraiser would go out and try to get an idea of what that could rent for. And as long as that amount doesn't exceed 30% of your total income, you could use 75% of those rents. So we have to dilute the rent. So let's say they're $1,000. We'd have to dilute that by 25% for the possibility of vacancy and maintenance. So we could use $750, but we could add that $750 to your qualifying income to help you qualify for a larger property. So it can actually help to increase your purchasing power.
Now, do you recommend talking to a contractor first or you as a lender first?
I would say doesn't really matter that much. I think if you talk to a contractor, they're going to give you a good idea of what something's going to cost. I'm not really going to be able to tell you what something costs. It's not really within my wheelhouse, but I can tell you how much equity you have in your property or which route you would need to go. So saying that, I think probably talking to me first just to get some general parameters. Okay, we can likely borrow up to this amount, or we're going to have to use a more nuanced product, or like just a more flexible product to really get you that money you need, or I might tell you that's just not possible. So yeah, I'd probably talk to the lender first, talk to me first.
Now, I've seen ADUs going for roughly $150,000 to $200,000, usually kind of an approximate cost. The one in Costco, did you happen to see how much that was?
I had she told me that it was, I want to say it was Costco. It probably was Costco if you saw something like that, but I never asked her how much it costed.
I did.
Oh, did you? How much are they?
It blew my mind. It blew my mind, folks. So under $50,000, you can buy it at Costco, have a contractor help you lay it all out, get the financing from Josh, and lo and behold, I mean, if you think about, like, if you're going to make payments on that, how quickly could you pay it off, right? I mean, a car costs that much. And if you could spread it out, how long on a line of credit? How long?
You could a 30-year loan.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So do the math, folks. It makes almost total sense to maybe even get it at Costco or find a local contractor to help you build it out. Just play with the numbers. You could either talk to Josh or myself, and we'll work it out where we could tell you like this makes sense or not. But I could tell you rentals alone in San Diego, a 1-bedroom, $2,000.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a minimum just cost to live here. You're not finding anything under $500 a month here.
Yeah.
A lot of people were building them out in their like garages, turning their garages into ADUs. I spoke to somebody recently, and I don't think about this kind of thing very often, but taking away a garage sometimes could affect the value of the house or the marketability of it.
Especially if it's a man cave.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But yeah, I mean, the amount of space that you need for something like this, that property that I was just talking about, I know another person in Bay Park that built one on a slope. I mean, and I wouldn't have expected that you could build anything in that small space, but
yeah.
I mean, she's renting that thing for, I want to say the ADU itself, the Costco ADU, is making over $50,000 a year.
I bet.
Airbnb.
I bet.
So it pays for itself in a year potentially.
Bingo. So I really want you to work out these numbers, folks, and see the opportunity. If you like where you live, you don't have to move across to Texas or Idaho or wherever people are going nowadays to like make sure that your fixed income is going to sustain for X amount of years.
Well, the other thing I was looking into as well was when you have a property, a rental property, most of the time it's going to be considered a passive activity in the eyes of the IRS, right? So yes, you can take some of those deductions, but there's more limitations on that. If you have an ADU and you're renting that out, certainly like on Airbnb or short term, if it allows it, you just want to check with the city if they allow that. But you could potentially write those losses off against other earned income sources, other non-passive sources. So somebody that's W-2, let's say like me, I could potentially take some of those losses against my W-2 income to reduce my tax liability. But even more so, the construction of that that ADU, you could accelerate depreciation. You could do a cost segregation study, break down different components, depreciate them at a faster pace, and potentially get a major reduction in your tax liability.
That's strategy, folks. That is big time strategy. So look up that word that Josh brought up, cost segregation. If you're a high income earner, then absolutely negative cash flow actually works in your favor.
100%. Yeah. When you're paying collective tax rate of 50%, that's and then if you're getting $50,000, that costs you 50. Everything else is basically pure savings.
There you go. Lastly, like when you have these, you set up to maybe even 4 units, now you turn this single family into a 4-plex. Do they have to get parcels with the city and make different addresses, or what are your thoughts on that, or do you know?
I don't know for sure. A mutual friend of ours, Stan, could probably tell you, what all the rules are. I know when we looked at properties where this has been done, they all have separate addresses because they are separate legal units. Now, for financing purposes, there's not really a specific thing that, like, let's say Fannie Mae is looking for. Now, they give you kind of some ideas of what to look for to determine if something's an ADU or a legal unit, but generally they want to see if it has a separate address, separate meters, separate utilities, things like that. Having one or not having one of those doesn't necessarily designate it to be a legal unit or an ADU.
Would you recommend separate meters?
If you could have separate meters, I would say yes. As a landlord, it would probably help as well.
Correct.
But yeah, you don't want to be
right answer.
paying as a landlord for sure. But yeah, it does help because the loan limits, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on that, but you could potentially purchase a bigger property without having to go into a jumbo loan if you have more legal units. So the number of legal units, if it goes up, then the county loan limits go up as well.
Correct. And then let's just say for whatever reason, they met with you first, they met with the contractor, the contractor's like, you know what, let's change our mind. You know what, we don't want to run that route. Do they get to still keep that line of credit, equity line?
So yeah, I mean, you brought up a good differentiating, a good topic for second mortgages. So you've got home equity lines of credit, which are an open-ended line of credit. So you can use it, pay it down, use it again, and you're going to have the ability to do that through the entire what we call draw period. So the typical draw period is going to be 10 years. That 10 years, you can use it, pay it down, use it again, and then after that 10 years, it'll get cut off. So let's say you owe $50,000 still left on that line, and it was a $250,000 line. No longer have access to that extra $200,000, and that $50,000 will be amortized, so you pay principal and interest over the remaining, let's say, 20 years. So you'll have 20 years to pay that back. That is a good option for people that are looking to do something like an ADU, where you may not want to use the funds, so you may not know how much you're going to need to use, and you don't want to pull out money arbitrarily. It's also good for business owners. So a business owner that just wants to have access to easy credit or have access to funds if they need it on a short-term basis, they'll just have a home equity line of credit with nothing on it. Most of my business owner clients, they'll set up HELOCs just to not use them or not to have to use them. A closed-ended second is another option. It works just like your first mortgage, so it's principal and interest. It's got a specific term, whether it be 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and you just pay principal and interest every single month. Over that term, it's a fixed interest rate, and if you've got it for 30 years, it's paid off in 30 years. That is a really good option for somebody that's, let's say, building an ADU. You know 100% you're going to move forward with that. You know what that thing is going to cost. If you have like a specific use in mind for those funds, I think that's a good option. The HELOC is a better option for somebody that doesn't need money right away, or you're going to need money over time, or you just want to have access to that. That line is going to be variable though. So HELOCs are variable. The closed-ended seconds are going to be a fixed interest rate.
Perfect. Josh, best way to get a hold of you?
Just call me. Best way to call me is at 619-495-9904, or you can email me at josh.gullick@ccm.com.
Perfect. We're here in sunny San Diego. Folks rent in Bernardo, but he does business everywhere around the country. So do I. So if you're looking to buy, sell, invest, please reach out to either one of us. Thanks so much, Josh.
Always a pleasure.
You're the man.
You are.